Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are studying the prophet Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, chapter 15. This is Saul Weinreb, the host of this podcast. We just finished chapter 14, where we pointed out the difference between the prayer of the people when they were suffering from hunger and drought, and the prayer of Yirmiyahu, where the prayer of the people, where they did have what we call vidoy and charata, they did express an understanding that they had sinned, and they admitted that. And they also expressed some level of remorse. However, they did not do anything that was a Kabbalah, a acceptance on the future of improving themselves, for which reason God said, I'm not listening to that prayer. And then God even told Yirmiyahu, the prophet, not to pray at all. But then Yirmiyahu prayed anyway. And in Yirmiyahu's prayer, he did condemn the practice of idol worship, which has been the major problem of the people, which repeatedly throughout the prophet's words until now, he has been criticizing the people for doing this. In Yirmiyahu's prayer and the prayer of the prophet himself to God, he said he did express a condemnation of the idol worship and saying, we can't turn to those other idols, whereas the people didn't even express the condemnation. But then, in the beginning of chapter 15, God sort of cuts him off and says, whoa, I told you not to pray. And let's read what God's words are from the beginning of chapter 15. Vayomer Adonai Eli, and God said to me in response to my prayer as follows: Im ya'amod Moshe u'Shmuel lefanai. Even if the two great prophets, Moses, and Shmuel, Samuel, even if the two of them were standing in front of me, still, ein nafshi ela amazeh, I will not pay attention. I will not change my mind about this nation. Shalach me al panai v'yetzeu. Just get away from, send them away from in front of me, v'yetzeu, and let them just go. Let them just get out of here. I'm not going to give in to them this time, even if those two great prophets. The Rashi points out that both Moshe. Why did we choose these two prophets? So there's several reasons given. The one that I like the most here is Rashi's reasoning, because both of them, by Moshe and Shmuel, when they prayed to God when the people were being bad, and they were also successful, unfortunately temporarily, but at least for the time being, they were successful in getting the people to turn around and recognize their mistake. After the golden calf, Moshe was able to say famously, Mila Hashem Elai, who is here with God, and bring at least some of the people away from the golden calf and back towards God. He was able to start turning the people around, and we find in Samuel and with Shmuel also that he was able to turn the people around. Whereas Yirmiyahu, like we just pointed out, and this prophet has so far been completely unsuccessful. Whether that's his fault or not is a different story, but it's clear that he has been unsuccessful. So God is saying, even if Moshe and Shmuel were in front of me, it wouldn't help, because they're being unsuccessful, because the people aren't changing. So pray as much as you want, but it ain't doing nothing. So don't bother. That's one understanding of why God chose Moshe and Shmuel. The other understanding is the Radak, simply because those are the two really two of the greatest prophets of all time, and they're of higher stature than Yirmiyahu, than the prophet Jeremiah, who's later in history, and a little bit of lesser stature as a prophet. Another understanding is the Abarbanel, who says because Moshe and Shmuel were both members of the same tribe, they were both Levites, as similar to Jeremiah, who was a priest, which is also from the tribe of Levi. So those are just some understandings of why God chose to use those two as an example here. But either way, God is saying, even if they were here, and I'm going to go with Rashi's, it wouldn't help, because if the people don't change their ways, nothing's going to happen. V'hoya, and it will be. Ki yomru elecha anon eitzeh, when the people are crying to you, where should we go? Where should we run? Because what's going to happen? The enemy's going to come, and then everyone's going to realize that you've been telling them the truth the whole time. And they're going to come to you for advice, and they're going to say, where should we run? Where should we go? How do we get away? And unfortunately, what you're going to have to say to them is as follows: Ko amar Adonai, so says God. The only place you can run to is destruction. Asher lamaves, those of you that are running towards death are going to unfortunately die. Asher lacherev, those running towards war are going lacherev, to war. Asher larav, those running towards hunger, larav are going to hunger. Asher lashevi, and those that are going into captivity, lashevi, are running into captivity. In other words, no matter where you run, there's no way you can run, but you can't hide, as they say. There's no way to get away from this. That's the only place you're going. Ufakadati alam, and I will bring upon them arba mishpachos, 4 families of creatures, 4 groups of beings that are going to hurt them. No'om Adonai, so says God. What are these 4 beings? At the cherev, the armies of war, laharog, coming to kill, v'atak klavim, the dogs, the schov, to drag away the bodies, v'at ofa shamayim, and the birds of the sky, meaning to pick away at the corpses, v'at be'emat tahoretz, and the animals of the field, the wild animals, le'achol, the scavengers, le'achol lashchis, to come eat lashchis and destroy the people. And hatim l'zava, and I will make the people an example of horror. People will talk about the people of Judah as like shaking in horror about the terrible calamity. L'chol mamlechos haaretz, for all of the kingdoms of the world are going to talk about how terrible the destruction was. And why is that? Who ruined this all? Beglal Menashe ben Yechizkiyahu, because of Menashe, the king, the son of Yechizkiyahu, Melech Yehuda, the king of Judah, al asher asa b'Yerushalayim, because of what he did in Jerusalem. Menashe was the king that, as it was the son of Yechizkiyahu, he was known for his extreme evil. He was an evil king, a terrible king. He brought the people to worshiping idols and to levels of corruption which had been unseen before. And until Menashe, the people, there were some kings that were good, some kings that were bad. There was good, it went up, went down, went up, went down. Once Menashe came along, the situation that got so bad that God says that after that, that's when they spiraled to the point where they are now, which seems to be the point of no return, where they are so stuck in their evil ways that there's no hope and destruction is inevitable. The Targum here says actually differently, because with the tradition in the Talmud is that Menashe at the end of his days actually did repent, and he learns it that the reason why you are not going to be saved, he's saying to the people, is because of Menashe, meaning because you did not do what Menashe did. Menashe did at the end of his days recognize his mistakes, but you guys are not recognizing your mistakes, which would be consistent with how we were reading the last few verses, that the issue here is that Menashe recognized his mistake and changed his ways, but the people are not doing that. That you might claim to recognize your mistake, but if you don't change your ways, it doesn't mean anything. Ki mi achmol, and here we have almost, it's God lamenting over Jerusalem. Ki mi achmol alayich Yerushalayim, who now will have mercy upon you, Jerusalem? Umi yanudlach, who's going to come to lament over you, to cry over you? Umi yasor, who is going to turn lishol shalom lach, to turn when they like when you, the metaphor is when you pass someone in the street and you turn and look and say, hey, how's it going? And how are you doing? No one's even going to turn to look at you and ask you how you're doing. God is saying this because I was the one, God's saying, that loved you. I was the one that took care of you. I was the one that was always asking. Remember, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim is the verse from Psalms 122, verse 6. God is telling the people to ask for the, ask about the peace. See, find out how Jerusalem is doing, see how they're doing, take care of them. But no one's taking care of you. No one's going to take care of you anymore after I exile you and destroy the people in Jerusalem. God is lamenting over Jerusalem, saying, you slipped away from me. You went away from me, Noam Adonai, says God. You're constantly going backwards. Instead of moving forwards and improving, you're constantly going backwards. Therefore, therefore I had to stretch my hand out over you, and destroy you. I no longer can change my mind. I can no longer turn around. In other words, I've been angry at you before, but I've changed my mind. I've been convinced. You prayed, you did a little better, but no more can I do that. Why? Because you won't come back. That you won't turn back to me. Therefore, I'm going to scatter you with a winnower, which is which scatters the chaff from the grain. B'sharei haaretz, throughout all of the places on earth. Shikalti, I have been bereaved. Ibadati es hami, I have destroyed my nation. Midarkehem lo shavu, because they haven't changed their ways. Again, the emphasis on they haven't changed their ways. They've prayed, but they haven't changed their ways. Atzmuli al minotav mechol yamim. The several ways of translating this, but the one way of understanding al minotav is there are so many widows. There are so many of them. Mechol yamim, more than the sands of the sea. So if you imagine, God promised Abraham a long, long time ago that his children were going to be numerous as the sands of the sea. Now God is saying, after you destroyed the people, that the widows of the people, so many people have died, that the widows are counted like the grains of sand on the sea. The Hevesi Lahem Al Aim Bachor Shoded Batzaharayim. There's several ways to translate this. Rashi and Matsudos translate this as follows: I have brought upon the aim, meaning the mother, but here the aim is referring to the city of Jerusalem. So I have brought upon the city, and we've seen that reference several times. Bachor Shoded Batzaharayim. Attackers that destroy in the noon time. That's one way of understanding it. The Malbim understands this very differently. He looks at this word aim and translates it as mother, but in this case meaning this, referencing back to the widow that we mentioned in the beginning of the verse. And then it would be Hevesi Lahem Al Aim, I have brought to them, upon those widows, Bachor Shoded, a young man, meaning a soldier who is a Shoded, who is here referring to really a rapist, that ravaged the women during the destruction, Batzorayim, in the middle of the daytime, just to show how awful it was that it was in the middle. It wasn't even at night. It wasn't even in hiding. It was out in the open. Another way of understanding the word aim is from the language of Ummah, a nation. And then it would mean, Hevesi Lahem Al Aim, I brought upon the nation a Bachor Shoded, a group of young attackers, soldiers, Batzorayim, in the noontime. We're still in verse 8, one of the more difficult verses to translate, but we're working our way through it. Hipalti Aleha Pitom. God continues to lament and say, I suddenly had to make fall upon her, on Zion and Jerusalem, on the people of Judah, ear. Scholars tend to translate this as either anguish or alarm. So hipaltila pitom, ear, anguish or pain or alarm, with the halos and terrible noise and terror and tumult. Other ways to understand this is ear, which usually means a city, would then, and the Radak reads it this way, that it would read as follows: Hipalti aleh pitom, I made fall, pitom ear, I made fall upon the city suddenly, uvehalot, and it was done in a way of terror and trauma. Another way to understand the word ear here would be, and many of the traditional commentaries understand it this way, it means a soneh, a hater. So then it would be hipaltila pitom, I made fall upon her suddenly the haters, uve'alot, and a tremendous amount of noise and terror. Umlala yoledet hashiva. She who had, this is verse 9, she who has given birth to the seven, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Nafcha nafsha, her soul has exhausted and her soul has just left her. Ba shimsha ba'od yomam, her sun has set while it was still day, in other words, before her time that should have happened. Bosha v'chafeira, she is embarrassed and ashamed. Ushe'eri sam, and the remnant of her, la'chera v'etain, I'm going to put the sword l'fnei ovehem, before their enemies, no'am Adonai, so says God. So what is this referring to? Rashi has a really nice explanation, which several of the other traditional commentaries understand it. Yoledet hashiva, she who has birthed seven, refers to the seven different hereditary kingdoms that ruled over the northern kingdom. There were seven royal families over the years, as for anyone that's learned through the prophets knows in the history that there was a king, and sometimes they had a son and a grandson that followed them, and then there was a coup and they overthrew them, and another house set up, and so on and so forth, that in Rashi counts out the seven. So that's one way. And then the meaning of this verse is that the northern kingdom, there was the Yoledet Hashiva, they're the ones, they're forlorn, they're distraught, they're lost, they're gone. She's gone and she left, and the remnant, meaning the people of Judah and the people that are remaining, unfortunately, I'm going to have to destroy them too because they haven't learned their lesson. Another way is the Radak understands the Yoledet HaShiva in a different meaning. Shiva always means many. It's a language that means a lot. Shiva is just a lot of, sometimes we see it throughout the several other times, and we see it in the Talmud also. Shivim, the 70. It's a large number. So Yoledet HaShiva means the one who gives birth to the people, who has given birth to so many children. It was so populous. Unfortunately, now they are mourning their loss of so many people. That would be how the Radak reads this. Others see it as Yoledet HaShiva, the people of the seven, because there's so many things. Seven is a complete cycle, a cycle of the week, of holidays are 7 days, and so on. There are so many things. The people are the people that are the Yoledet HaShiva. They at least should have lived a life that is surrounded by the concept of the completion of seven, the spiritual concept of seven. And Lala, she is now those people of the seven, which are the Jewish people, are now unfortunately forlorn and in mourning. This is the end of Yirmiyahu 15a, and just because these verses are so difficult to translate, it take it a lot longer to get through these verses. So I'm going to stop here, and we'll continue 15b in the next podcast. Thank you so much.